Right, here we go. Okay, I'm gonna give a disclaimer to our audience. Thank you all for being here. My disclaimer is that I'm sitting in a gas station in some random place in South Carolina, after having just been camping and sleeping on my family's land and making photographs. So I'm tired, but I'm here. And because I love Nykelle and I want to do my best, Nykelle, I snorted some Adderall and I drank a Diet Coke before this. So, like, I'm ready, homie. Like, let's do this. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, we're going to start with the icebreaker.
Mhm.
Nykelle was like, I don't want to do a traditional artist talk. I want it to be a conversation and like be ratchet and yada yada yada. So I'm gonna give you just that, Nykelle.
Hey, I'm ready for it. Give it all to me.
All right. So first question. You ready for this?
That was a yes.
Lube, lube or spit?
Depend. Oh God, that ratchet. Okay, well, lube, spit, then to lube.
Okay. All right. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Gotta mix it up, a little combination. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. So Nykelle, why don't you tell our lovely audience, thank you all for being here too. Why don't you tell us like what conditioner you use in your hair?
I was just born this way.
That's
I don't do.
exactly.
I just wake up and no bonnet.
Okay,
I
now you
just.
lying because you just stayed in my house and I seen you sleep in a bonnet. So we're not even gonna go there. Just
This is
just starting off with lies, starting off. All right, so I just
We're
saw on
black.
the sorry to cut you off.
Oh, I just said we're black. We have to gatekeep. This is a little podcasty. I see you.
It
Sorry
is.
about.
It really is. Yeah. So I'm like real curious because I'm like in the South. I was gonna wear my Trump hat because I
Mhm.
like to blend in when I'm amongst his peoples. But I decided not to because the Bay Area and it's like radical folks, artists get a little offended. But tell me like what happened today because I just like saw a headline. So like where are we? And connect that to your work that you are doing. So this moment
Sick.
in history to like your overall kind of like work.
Where are we? Trump is allowed to run, I guess, and he's pardoned for all his shit, whatever the fuck, which we all knew was going to happen. And Biden also decided 100% he's going to stay in the race. And so we have a race between Trump and Biden. And what we're already seeing as of BET from last night is people are starting to say, hey guys, we got to vote. This is the most important election of our entire lives. If Trump wins, it's 2025 and we're going to fall into fascism. And how I can tie that into my practice pretty well is to say that's really, really, really foolish. We're just going to play the same game over and over again. And people, mostly liberals, mostly Americans, mostly non-Black queer Americans, don't understand that we're just falling right into the fucking cycle. Um, I believe that we have to radically imagine something better than one genocidal racist versus another. And my own personal politic is Excel rationalism, which is the idea that we need to actually vote for right-wing parties so we can speed run through late-stage capitalism to get to the other side, which is why I voted for Trump last time, because that was the only time white people actually were in the streets. Hey,
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
think
whoa,
about
whoa,
it.
whoa, whoa, whoa. Did you just say you voted for Trump?
I voted for Trump because that was the last time black people, white people were in the streets. We burned down Minneapolis only under a Republican president. And then the second Biden came into office, I live in the liberal city of Portland, Oregon. Um, they took out the BLM signs and liberals said we did it. And then they funded the police more than Trump ever did. And then we started the genocide 3 weeks later. So I'm just like, the violence against black and brown people is going to happen regardless. It's just a matter of how uncomfortable white people's lives can actually become. And I think thinking about like where my practice is right now, it's like how there's it's hard for me to talk about my practice without also talking shit about all the other art in the art world right now. But I think especially coming from SFAI and the Bay and this like complicity in general from BIPOC artists, no one's really like radically saying that much, you know? I think the most
Okay, I'm
radical.
gonna put. I want to push back. I want to push back
Yeah,
and be
okay,
like,
let's
okay,
do it. Let's do
we're
it. Let's
okay.
do
So
it.
okay, so we're also in this moment where we're seeing,
Mhm.
a huge turn up internationally for Gaza. So let me go and push back and be like, actually, there is art being created, right? Wouldn't you say so?
Not within the institution, not within the white walls, not within the gallery.
Because
There's
look what
very
happens when
little,
you make that kind of work, right? You get blacklisted. Like your show
and
gets canceled.
And that's the thing. Why are we still trying to fight to be in institutions that allow us to be blacklisted? I mean, we're sitting here under SFAI, and I think the whole time Black students were getting expelled consistently. They tried to expel me. And we had white students who were just explicitly racist. We're constantly trying to do the dance for these white institutions, and it's the same thing. It's just a continuation right now within in the Black arts, the bigger art world, the art with a capital A world. And it's not to say that I think I'm doing something so radically different or the direction of my work that I want to move towards, not the work I've done in the past, but the direction I want to move in work is just radical in that. But I'm saying that there's a whole world of Black artists and artists of color in general that are so over this system where we have to like play just nice enough. We can kind of like put it into the system and fudge it a little bit. And I think my generation, the generation below me, because I'm like a millennial Gen Z cusp E96er, no one wants to play the game anymore, which we're seeing with Gaza. And that's like the most beautiful thing is like artists are saying, actually, I don't want to like codify my way to say fuck white people through this kind of like mid-century arts written by Lacan. Like there's no more of that. I think we're going to see a resurgence of Afrofuturism. I think we're going to see a resurgence of just we're kind of seeing a resurgence of Afro-pessimism right now in contemporary art. But I think we're also just going to see people just say no to these institutions and just like make the work. Like we even saw with the Whitney Biennial, artists had to sneak in Gaza into their works. And it's just like that's not going to be the truth 10 years from now. It's either going to be you're going to show work that says we want the fall of America, we want the fall of Western Empire, or we don't want it. And so I think moving towards my thesis exhibition, because right now I'm in my third year at UCSD, getting my MFA in visual arts. I'm kind of saying that like, well, I don't want to be subtle about saying I want to burn the system down. And we can get into that further as we go on.
So let's you talk about Afrofuturism, and that is a main aesthetic of your work. And aesthetic is not the right word I want to use, but I'm exhausted. Tell me what you envision, what you would like to see in the future in terms of art, how we engage with art, how we exhibit our work. What does that look like for you?
I'm gonna s- I'm gonna share my screen right now and just like have some of my photos in the background as we start to talk.
Great,
Um,
thank you for that.
um, I hope some of these questions. Oh my God, I can't move there we go. And I'm gonna switch to this photo as we start to talk. Um, what do I envision and what I hope for the future of like of Black art via the language of Afrofutures? When I think of Afrofuturism, I just think of it's just imagining, you know. I feel like right now we're in this great space of transition. We're literally watching an empire fall, and I think art can kind of just give some type of lens as to the world we want to imagine. I think artists like American artists is starting to kind of do that in their sculpture works. But I think also just I think there needs to be a space for hope that isn't just kind of loose. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What
I
did
think that's okay.
sorry, I was gonna say this photographer, James Natchaway, I think that's how you pronounce his last name. He said hope is always the last to go. Hope is always the last to die.
Mhm.
So yeah, I agree with you. I do feel like there is a period of for me, I just left a conference, a journalism conference, and there was so much ideating. There was so much hope in, what BIPOC, media makers, artists want to create, are going to create. And there's actually, there's a little bit of funding that is being released to be able to do that. And so I have to wonder, if Trump gets in office, will funders, donors, start to see the value of art and culture and really start to like, fund that. That's what I'm hoping for.
I think what the real beautiful thing we're going to see is a resurgence of DIY culture. I think we're going to lose a lot of funding. I think we're going to, the ways that we make a grand statement isn't going to be through $100,000 installation at the Whitney to say the death of America just occurred. It's going to be through a zine fest at your local Black Arts Council, which is why I'm a lot more interested in like what it means to be on the more I don't know. Yeah, I guess do it yourself kind of nature of what arts is to come. Though I
Hmm.
make works that have to be fabricated and are quite large, and so I'm dancing in this weird line in between. But that's why I'm definitely thinking of zines as part of kind of my final installation towards my thesis is how do we kind of dismantle information at the cheapest form possible because we're just not going to have any other options soon. All the networks that we've created to kind of imagine being the ways we give out art are going to be shifting in these 10 years, in these
Hmm.
next couple of years. I mean, the last few years, we saw this grand transition into social media, and we all thought that was going to be the liberatory act of art. We thought NFTs were going to be the liberatory act of art. But I mean, you're shadow banned on Instagram if you say the word genocide or if you say the word Israel. So like what we, that's not going to be in contemporary media artists, that are young-ish, are still making work in this kind of digital sphere, like, or the VR world, or this kind of like, but they're not even starting to say like, hey, actually, that world is still just completely what's the word for it? Muted or gagged. Censored. So, I think we're going to go the same kind of radical transition of like reimagining what the medium that we even use is to even start the conversation is going to be a part of this transition.
Um, that was great. I hope to see like, every community having like a little gallery or something, just space for, let's bring the art to the people, to our actual communities. Um, so tell me about your most recent, newest project, the book, The Crossroads, which is the combination of 10 years of your practice. That will be released next year. Congratulations. I can't wait for a signed copy and to go to the opening. Tell me about that project.
Thank you, thank you. I'm gonna kind of cycle through a few images from the project as we go. Give me a if I should go on to the next image because I'd be forgetting sometimes. Um, and I haven't actually officially announced it yet, so this is kind of just the, talking about it here thing. But I was approached by the publisher for The Birds Trapped in Airports, which is formerly Candor Books, to make my first monograph, which is the Crossroads, spelled THA Crossroads, like the Bone Thugs and Harmony song. Um,
It's the
but
first of the month.
yeah,
Sorry, I
pay
had
for
to.
rent.
I paid my rent at like 1:30 this morning. I was like, look
I
at me adulting.
still got it. But yeah, so I mean the project spans 10 years from when I was actually like 17. I think was so now it's 11 years. No, when I was 16, the first photo made in this project was done. So it's 12 years into this project. And what I started to do is in the last couple of years, I have to either pick an image or I have to speak. So I'm just gonna speak and let that image sit there for a second because it's an older photo. Um, but okay, let's just jump into it. Let's talk about my family history. Um, I was adopted. I was raised away from my family, but I was raised in this like deep spiritual center. My mother ran one of the largest Hindu ashrams in America, and so I was raised in this very spiritual spaces, but I wasn't like connected to like Afro spiritualism or even through Baptist church. Like I wasn't or through like Black religion, African American religious connotation. I was specifically in this like other space. And so when I turned 18, 19, I can reconnect to my birth family. I understood like hoodoo, but I was also more so like I needed to find a way to reconnect to my like original spirituality or spirituality that made sense to me. And so as I started to do it, I dive deep into like, more African spiritualism, this which inspired the works of Flash of Spirit, which I can talk about in a second. But I started to see these kind of visual tropes that would kind of repeat through my work, even before I was even thinking of any of this stuff back when I was, 16 and making photo like this, or, I don't think that's the oldest photo. Um, I started realizing that there was certain symbology that was happening in my work, even though that I connected to a Black spiritualism even before I had the language for what my Black spirituality was. And so I kind of saw the crossroads as me literally going to the crossroads to kind of speak to some type of ancestral knowledge, to try to kind of reconnect to something that I felt like was lost. And so the crossroads is a culmination of me literally trying to reach and to find this language. Like so what I started to do is I started to connect. I went through my archives of like 300,000 photos, I think, by in the last by yeah, I think I'm up to like 300, 400,000 photos as we are as we talk.
Really?
Yeah, I
Wow.
shoot a lot, and I just started to pick through the photos and be like, where are these moments where I'm actually kind of speaking to this kind of language without even realizing it? And
How much of that is film? I'm just curious, like how many film negatives did you
Not a lot. I mean, I used to do I good 200,000, like most of it's digital, but most
Okay.
of the work in the Crossroads is all film. And actually most of it still is Polaroids. Like these are Polaroids,
Mhm.
Polaroids, which is what I primarily shoot now. But I just started to collect all this work together and to kind of form my own way of kind of going to this space to speak to the his ancestor. But sorry, go on. You were about to ask something, I think.
I'm looking at your black and white work, which I really love, and I remember the work that you were doing at SFAI. Well, I've never seen that. That's beautiful. Um, can we talk about your time at SFAI and what that experience was like for you?
Yeah. Do you have any specifics? No, I can.
Let's talk, tell me about how, so I didn't know that you were shooting as a teenager. I didn't know you were making photographs as a teenager. And I haven't seen that work. And I look forward to seeing more of that work. But tell me about how being at a school like SFAI, how that shaped your work, how that influenced your work, particularly, the community that you had, because you were lucky you had me and Uncle Wasam. So
Yeah,
yeah, tell me about that.
I was very fortunate to come in and meet both you and Wissam and Ben and the other kind of black and brown artists that were moving in through the circle at the time. I think I came in through this kind of old world photo desire. Like a lot of my works at the time from high school were more in the vein of like Larry Clark and like, making a teenage lust kind of recreation with some of my high school images. And then I dove deep into like the Japanese photographers, which I'll speak about a little bit later on. But I think through it all, through most of my time at SFA, I didn't feel like I was seeing representation of the work that I was necessarily in conversation with, even though I was, again, making this really Black spiritual work. No one there had the language to kind of critique it as such. And so I think the first time I actually had the kind of that the school actually gave me something was when I had the privilege of having a class with Dewey Crumpler, which I think is one of the greatest artists there. You just put me, I was 18, 19, and they put me onto Sun Ra, and it was just like, hey, here's this thing. And I'm like, wait a moment. I didn't have a language for my spirituality, but here was this man from the stars that said, black man is from Mars, and you can use the sonic vibrations to be able to connect us through music. And I was like, my mind was blown in the same way he spoke about meeting Sun Ra or listening to Sun Ra for the first time in the 60s or 70s. And I was just like, okay, I had the language from that. Um, but once I was diving deep into that kind of self-work and that self kind of reflection and that self-research to kind of like go down that path of Afrofuturism, I didn't feel held by the institution to kind of figure out what that was. I was still in photo classes when I was looking at Larry Sultan, and I'm just like, come on, this is 2020, 2018, you know? And so, in classrooms of the silent crit, which is something Black students experience at every single art school, not just SFAI, where people don't have the language to kind of speak about this work because it's coming from this really internal space. And then mix that with the school where it was extremely privileged and we had students who came from money. It's like it's just no one had the kind of empathy to kind of speak about Black suffering or Black beinghood, which is why we, curated our show together to speak specifically to that, to the gentrification in the Bay Area. But I don't know. I think the biggest thing SFI really taught me is what I didn't like. It made me hypercritical. It made me hyper aware of white mediocrity, and it made me able to kind of gauge where we stand in it all. I think through it, I had the freedom that school is known for to experiment, which was great, but it was fueled through hate, which made me spiteful, which really informed my practice as to where it's going right now. And so
Yeah,
I'm
you was
actually
like, you was really surly. You was like so surly when you were in school. You
I
were like so dark, which is why that work of like, particularly I'm thinking of the night photographs of San Francisco,
uh,
that like loneliness that, came through. Yes. Yep. 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 Yeah. Yeah. It was a hard period for you.
yeah. Which
Um, sorry, go
almost
ahead.
a moment to kind of come of age while also living in the Bay Area that was going through this violent education and watching as an outsider from the privilege of the institution, but trying to document it and only seeing the kind of, what was being lost. So it was a really interesting moment to kind of witness so much. And it was such a privilege to have photojournalist friends as you and Wissam who were more tapped into like what it meant to be communally on the ground, which is something artists were lacking and still are. It's like, what does it mean to actually speak through community, to be watching this destruction? It's not, it's this theory, but there was no practice happening within the classrooms.
Other than Dewey, who are some of the professors, instructors that, that kind of loved on you, nurtured you, and helped you move along through this journey
I
of
think
life?
there are professors that definitely loved my practice and loved what I was doing, but I wouldn't say any nurtured where my practice ended up other than Dewey and Sempata, who left. But those were the two that I think really had the language to push me. And those are the only two I ever shout out in artist talk. But there were a lot of artists that I loved.
Such as who?
Oh, shows like Jonah Arnold and Josh Smith and even to an extent Linda Connor, though we didn't always mesh. I think of oh my goodness, why am I not thinking of her name? Lisa, um not Lisa, oh my goodness, who ran the photo program. That's crazy to me.
We have a request in the DMs, Nykelle,
Yeah, give it to me, dude.
that you please speak up.
Oh, my apologies.
Yeah. Um, where was this photograph taken, Nykelle? Tell me about
This
this photograph.
This photograph is in Italy, actually. It was my father's best friend for many, many years. This old gay man. He passed away recently, but he had AIDS, and one of his things is he just was like, I'm gonna live for my last years, I'm gonna live out in nature, and I'm going to have my horse, and I'm going to grow my weed, and I'm gonna have a good life. And so I just made this image of his horse kind of running through the little field out back. And I didn't originally include it in the crossroads because I've been really stagnant or really strict about not including any kind of relationships to whiteness, and this was a white man's, expensive horse. Um, but there was something about the being of this being that I felt like spoke to the spirit that you'll see within my book, with the ways it's oh, why am I stuttering now? Um,
Take your time. You
it
okay? You
take
got
my
this.
time, take my time. We have time.
I went
Um,
to go see I went to go see A Man About a Horse yesterday. I think I told you. And I was shooting with the 645 and I used the flash and it freaked out the horse, and the rest of the time I was there, like the horse would not fuck with me. Like the horse kept giving me the side eye, like, don't come over here with your camera. Like
that's kind of
just
what happened with this image. This is the personal image I was able to get of him. Um, but yeah, there is this something about, I'll put back up this image, the heavy black that exists in this photo that I saw in this. And so throughout my book, I used this intense black as a representation of void. And so I wrote throughout my practice. This is also thanks to Dewey Crumpler. He said that in this beautiful conversation with Sadie Hartman, he said something along the lines of, in the West, the void is, or blackness or darkness is a space of fear, it's a space of lack, it's a space of unknowing. But in the African context, the blackness or the void is a space of absolute intention, or not intentionality, but possibility and potentiality. And so I started kind of going through my images and finding these spaces where the void is the activation of the space, where these deep blacks are the kind of um, where the potential energy lies.
mm.
Um, and so within
This
my crossroads, this exists in the chapter of spirit, to say like this is the void comes from, or the spirit comes from these voids.
mm. This is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the only photograph that I have seen of your work that is of an animal. Am I right?
Ravens. There's a few raven. I used to be obsessed with ravens because of Mahuisha Fikaze's Solitude of Ravens. I did a whole series following the raven. But yeah, I think this is the only one that exists within this project.
All right, I'm gonna kick it over and ask about one of the aesthetics that you use often. And I love it in the photograph of you and your partner. It's such a beautiful print. I'm like, man, maybe I should have chose this print and not the other one. Can I do an exchange? Can I get both? Just just saying.
You got a big ass print.
Tell me about the sparkle. Why the sparkle?
This
I mean, we
sparkle.
know that Black people are like, we just generally are like sparkly, beautiful, amazing, like human beings, just like, moving through the world, giving off
Well,
shine.
there's a reason why Black people are obsessed with the shine. And that goes back to, and I'm going to go back to the original photo. Um, so this was part of a series called Flashes Spirit that I started when I was at SFAI. Don't let it not like it. Uh, but it was reference to a book by, oh my goodness, not Frank Wilderson.
No, Robert Ferris. Robert,
Robert
I
Ferris
think,
Thompson.
yep, yeah,
Thank
Robert
you.
Ferris,
Robert,
yeah.
Robert Ferris Thompson's Flash Spirit. And so he was one of the first people in the West to write about Black art and to say that there was actual, or to write about African art and to say that there was actual spiritual significance and deep meaning into every single visual trope that was used throughout, like throughout works that were seemed to be for communal reasons, like masks or cups or forks or plates or houses. Every single object had some type of deeper spiritual significance. And so one of the things they point to in West African, throughout West Africa, there would be these dances that used these wooden masks that were painted white and black. And as these dances were happening, the wearer would twirl around and it would create this almost spark effect, this kind of it's almost the effect of a strobing light. And it was believed that in the flesh, spirit was entering into the body. Spirit was possessing someone almost in the same way the Lawal mounts the rider in hoodoo, or in the same way someone would catch the Holy Spirit in the church. You were becoming possessed by spirit through a strobe of light. And we see that throughout the diaspora. Krista Thompson has this beautiful book called Shine, throughout, that talks about the kind of aesthetics throughout the African diaspora we see, especially in like dance hall and music. But we also see that, think of the grills we wear in our teeth, to the jewelry, to the gleam of our skin. Whenever some type of happening where we're trying to call in some type of action or some type of, you know, je ne sais quoi, we do it through this kind of effect, through this light. So I created this series in undergrad where I would kind of don these fabrics, these sequin fabrics, and I would kind of dance. I would just simply move. I would simply move my body. I would simply dance. I would simply try to kind of feel spirit and call upon some type of ancestral knowledge because I felt so lost at the time. And I would, let these kind of sparkling effects happen. And so then as I continued on through my practice, I would look through my archives and realize that the sparkling light was happening through different ways, the glistening of the skin or the kind of backdrops for these peoples I was photographing. Um, this kind of calling in was always happening. And something that I get asked quite often by my professor. I'm my professor at my not my professor, my advisor at UCSD is Paul Sapuya, and he regularly asks me, "Are you is spirit happening in the sequin itself, or is it happening in the light that's being cast by the strobe or by the sun? Where is it that spirit is actually manifesting?" And I believe that spirit is kind of all encompassing in this moment for it to even happen. It's happening, spirit is coming through when I'm hacking, this white supremacist camera to, throw light through it as this form of spiritual practice or a form of meditation. Spirit is happening in the activation of the fabric itself. Spirit is happening to even call upon us to this moment to be doing this ritual. Spirit is kind of this all-encompassing thing that leads to this moment. And so that kind of leads me to talking about the Japanese photographers that I was so obsessed with is, the Japanese photographers of the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s. They were called this group called Provoke. And they were not interested in the kind of, I don't know, I guess I'd say the kind of Western ideals of photography is this singular moment, we're taking, it's almost representation of the Roman pillar. It's this exact moment of time. It's historical, it's frozen. That's kind of how photography was always related to us. But they were more interested in this kind of emotionality that happens when you start to kind of have these blurry photos, when time is starting to compress, when you're having thousands of photos and you're layering them on top of each other. We're not interested in this exact moment. We're interested, or we're saying that photography has the potential to sow this past, that's really influencing this moment of the now, and both are in conversation. But I start to say, I think the aesthetics of Black photography, when it's done right, or has the potential to be done right, is that Flash is almost connotation to spirit speaking to, I said a lot of words right there, but Flash is almost representation of potential. The void is representation of this potential to come. Flash is representation of this past that's happening, and the photograph exists somewhere in this middle space. And I think that is what Black art is when we think of it at its peak. I mean, think of dance. It's a movement in time. And I think most of the times when we think of Black arts, we're thinking of these time-based medias where we're moving from a past to a present. And I think photography, we've been stuck in this moment, um, where we don't think photography has the potential to do that because it's literally frozen in time. But I think if we actually were to rely on the aesthetics, to kind of, again, emotionally say that time is being expanded upon beyond the singular moment, maybe there's a way to kind of poetically call upon or expand the potentials in the medium, or I would even say hack the medium of what it's capable of.
How are you hacking the medium? What are you doing?
Am I hacking the medium? Um, I'm just not obsessed with doing anything the medium tells me I'm supposed to do. you know, instead of using, a high-end camera making some perfect image, I'm using a Polaroid with, where I'm allowing scratches to happen. I'm throwing my Polaroids on the ground. I'm having these longer exposures. I'm doing these blown out flashes. I'm letting kind of, I'm doing it incorrectly. Um, I think people would say that isn't necessarily what we think of when we think hacking the camera. I think people would try to take apart the very basis of the camera. But I think it's more so hacking the fundamental rules of the medium itself. It's to say, we can allow dust to exist. We can allow overexposure to exist. We can let light kind of do things that's not typically seen as a good image.
Right,
Um,
yeah. I mean,
what
it would have been interesting to like, kind of have a professor at SFAI, that was like hacking the medium, that was doing something that wasn't traditional, for me, because sometimes it's still hard for me to, like, oh, is this composition right? Is it, like obsessing over those little details when it's like, you know,
Let's be
you
free.
be free. Yeah, don't think about it. Just like, make some photographs. You don't have to always like, obsess over it and think about it. Make some photographs, like move from your heart and soul and not necessarily from, how is it going to look when it hangs on the wall? What are people going to think?
How can we take this out of our head and put it into our heart? And I think that's what so much of the Japanese photographers are doing. I mean, people would say, "Oh, isn't that what the decisive moment is? It's just quickly responding, and the camera is just a response of his fingers." And I would say, no, no. What I can't even think of who just did the decisive moment because that's how little I care about traditional Western photographic history. Um,
Henri Cartier-Bresson.
Thank you, the Lakers. I think are different than what the Japanese photographers were doing because though you might see a specific moment frozen in the Japanese photo, because it's layered with so many other images around it, it becomes more about the emotionality. It becomes a place of the heart.
Um, let's talk about, yeah, let's go through because we got like uh almost 15 minutes left, and I have to like hit the road. So what do you want to share? Like in the last couple minutes, we want to leave time for photographs. I think one of the questions that I do have for you that I was thinking about is number one, how do you pay for your art? Number two is what's the hardest part about being an artist? Like what can be hard for you? What can be a struggle, a challenge in creating work?
Firstly, how do I pay for my art? I mean, I don't.
Sex
You
work,
know,
OnlyFans. You can throw your OnlyFans in the chat because you know what I'm saying. We want to like you so brilliant, so talented. We want to keep you out here in these streets. Go ahead and throw it in the link and throw your Venmo, your Cash App too.
I do have an OnlyFans, but that's separate from my art world. I try to treat my two worlds a little separate. Try to.
Yeah, as you're like big cis nibbling, I'm talking about, just we're not going there. But anyways, go ahead.
I will say, I mean, funding is difficult, and I think that's why I chose UCSD as my graduate program, is that I wanted a 3-year residency where I'm paid very little, but just enough I can live and think about my practice. I've been very lucky to win some random grants and some random awards that have funded like the camera acquisitions and things of that such. I've been fortunate enough to be have my work acquired by a couple museums that have honestly kept me from homelessness a couple times. And I've just been blessed by some luck. But existing within the art world, I realized that there's no one at this level of creation that I'm now at, which is, museums and master's degrees and a certain level of conversation. There's not anyone in the room that typically doesn't have some access to privilege. It's either the privilege of a good undergraduate education, which I was privileged to have, through the sacrifice of my parent, but I was able to have, um, or, a partner that has money, they have partners that have money, or they come from families that have money, or they have some type of prestige already in their family, or the, you know, there's or pretty light skin privilege. You know, there's not um at this level of creating, there isn't a way to exist without that being, which is also why I think these structures are quickly falling down upon us. Because people just don't want to, people are just seeing the hypocrisy of it. It's hard to make work that's saying down with the system while also, you know, being a part of
That's
it.
beautiful. That's beautiful. I love that piece. Um, where do you see yourself post graduation? Are you, well, number one, I can't wait for you to be in a classroom teaching and educating the future because you're so brilliant. But yeah, where do you see yourself like post graduation? What do you want to do?
I'm really hoping everything just blows up by then. That's my real hope. I'm really hoping that everything hits. You know, there's a joke amongst my classmates because we've dealt with two union strikes and the pandemic since we've been students at UCSD. And we're just like, are we even going to graduate? And I'm like, come this election, I think it's going to fuck up the art world so much that I don't think the typical routes I would potentially take, which is like working at a gallery or working at an institution, I think those opportunities are going to disappear. Um, so I don't really know because I feel like a new world is coming. I love teaching. I've had the privilege of through my under to fund my master's program. I'm a teacher's assistant for undergraduate art classes, but really for you know, it's institution as big as UCSD. We're teaching classes more or less. And I love the act of teaching. So I'm hoping that once I graduate, I'll have the opportunity to kind of, you know, go through the adjunct tunnel and find a way to find a tenure track position within the next, you know, coming years. Hopefully I just become famous enough I can fall right into a tenure track position. You know, that's the real dream.
Uh,
Um,
hopefully you become famous enough and I will be like in the guest bedroom or in the pool house. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what we hope for. I'm gonna put that on the altar, you know?
the goal is just to marry rich. Make good enough art that I'm in big enough circles that I can marry rich, and then we can you know, just have a small time adjunct teaching position. That's the real dream. Um,
Um, okay, so I'm gonna kick it over to some questions because time is running out and I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to miss my flight. First
I want
question
to
is what? Sorry, go ahead.
can I do a 2 minute thing real quick?
You can absolutely do whatever
Okay.
you want, Nykelle.
Okay.
This is your
I
space.
just wanted to show at the end of this. So this was my second year show. So I'm actually moving away from photography completely as I go towards as I'm doing my MFA program. I wish I had more time to talk about this. I've lost track of time. But this is an installation called Orchestra Landing, which was a sound and light installation based off of Sun Ra's ship in the film Space is the Place, where I just kind of use these giant subwoofers in the ceiling to try to like make you feel like what it's like to kind of enter the ship. And so I've been trying to create these kind of like more installation-based sculptural practice is kind of what I've been doing for the last year or so. And moving towards my thesis, it's going to be fully probably video and installation works. Just to say that, but it's still the same thing that's happening of light as the kind of activator for spirit to kind of lead us to something new.
Tell me
So
about the creation of this installation.
I feel like you had better questions to come. I'd rather, no, that
Okay.
sounded weird. You
All
were,
right,
I just,
we'll talk about this when I see you like next month. That's totally fine. All right,
yeah.
I'm gonna hop into the questions. This is from Noob. I'm sorry if I'm not
Oh, you guys here.
saying.
Hey, what's up?
Uh, my question is, how do you feel your work subverts with the bro-ish white cis photo culture that exists in a lot of photo departments and spaces? P.S. Much love.
Much love to them. Oh, sorry, someone just turned on a mower. Um, it does. Oh man, I don't know. Um, I think that's one of the
Come on
reasons
now,
why
you can answer that. I can
no,
answer that for you.
I can't answer that. I can answer that by saying I'm not interested in being in photo spaces much anymore. I feel like I'm, though I've done like an aperture thing and I've done big photo spaces and all these things, lens culture, lens craft, I said lens crafters. Um, I'm less interested into signing in or paying to be part of a um pay to be juried to show work where the jury's all white and it's just in photo. Like I just think works on paper is just it's less interesting to me. So I think my way of subverting the like traditional photo medium is just by running away from it as fast as I can. Um, and which, something my advisor says is a cop out. And I think it kind of is. Um, but I think I'm subverting it by making works like this, but works like this don't really go very far in a lot of those spaces. When people think of what Black art sells within photography, it's representation. They think representation is the only way to kind of how do I say, break into these spaces. So you see an image of like a beautiful Black person, typically light skin or very dark skin and like model-esque, in a very certain type of body in certain designer clothes, lit perfectly. And they say, look, we are the Black medium. We are in these spaces, i.e. aperture. But that isn't necessarily a Black aesthetic of photo making. And so, my work sometimes gets allowed into those spaces, but a lot of times it just isn't. And I'm just less interested in fighting so hard and being disappointed when the gatekeepers of the old world photo don't like my work. Because most of the time they look at this and are just like, what the fuck, it's out of focus.
Yeah. Yeah. No, real talk. I mean, it wasn't until like I had some support at SFAI, but I feel like it wasn't until Ken Light and going to Berkeley and him saying like, your work is valuable. Like what you are doing is valuable. Like I see it, and having that affirmation. I'm curious, Nykelle, you make I'm not gonna say a lot of self-portraits, but you do some self-portraits, some nudes. Tell me about that part of your body of work, and I guess how that making photographs of yourself, of your body, how that has helped you love yourself
Hmm.
more and accept who you are and your queerness and your amazingness.
I think I understood my body through the camera, which was both healthy and unhealthy. I found my sexuality through porn, by being lusted after, by being seen and
Hi
perceived.
there.
Hello.
What's that?
You're
Oh,
you're you're not muted, and we heard you say, "Oh dear."
that's okay.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But yeah, I think I found myself through porn and the idea of the optics of being perceived or not perceived. And so I think that was kind of that led to some unhealthy, but it also kind of understood my queerness as through a lot of queer people use, typically our bodies are most understood through not exotification, but through what's the word I'm looking for? Through desirability.
Fetishization. Oh, okay.
Politicization and desirability politic is a lot of the ways I kind of just understood my body through the lens. But then I was also creating these images like Flash of Spirit, I would also call self-portraits, because they're me as I'm speaking to an ancestor, or it's my true self kind of coming through the lens. And so I feel like I both found my spirituality, my relationship to my Blackness, to my Black spirituality, and to my sexuality and to my kind of gender expression through the kind of look of the lens, to how I perceive myself. So, it's been both a healthy and an unhealthy exploration, but I think I found myself through at the age of like 18 through, the selfie.
I'm curious, will you give me some advice as I start to embark on some more self-portraits, nudes? Like, what is your process of getting prepared for that? Like, yeah, how do you prepare for that? What do you say to yourself? How do you love, affirm, and take care of yourself as you make that work?
I think I just have to fall into it really deeply. And as I'm falling into it, as it feels like I'm just in the flow of it, and I think especially through, I don't have the works shown here, but like the nudes that are part of the crossroads, the black and white nudes are part of the crossroads. Um, I'm so much in flow state that the love that's coming to me is from a greater place, and I feel it as the lens kind of move is documenting. The same way it can be with porn of like the lust and desires moving through me, and I'm just performing this dance in front of the lens. And so I think what, you know, I think I I know that when I created this image, I felt fuller. I felt love. And this is actually, this image was created on a really dark day. This image was made the day that girl was killed on BART in San Francisco, or in, sorry, in
Nia
Oakland.
Wilson. Yeah, Nia
Mhm.
Wilson.
Um, I did it as a way, I did this image at the moment to be like, I need to process something. And I feel like most of my images are a way, like the ways I document myself are some ways of processing or working through. It's some way of making sense of it all. And so I think sometimes what is shown to me on the other side of the lens is the sense, is the kind of clarity that I kind of needed in that moment. Um, you know, not always with the porn, but like with the kind of self-portraiture practice. It's a desire to find some type of truth. The my favorite like was, I think it was a Charlie Mingus song that I always reference. He says, "Myself when I'm real," and I believe sometimes the lens has the kind of potential to do that when we subvert it, when we hack it to actually show the realness that isn't necessarily shown to us, or what we're told the lens is supposed to be. Realness isn't just, you know, my friend's exposed body. The realness is the spirit that I think is happening, or the potentiality that's happening behind him. You know, now that after he was killed, we see the spark as a more, as speaking to something, as a past and a present is happening in the exact moment. Um,
Photograph feels so uh ancestral. You know, it's almost yeah, it feels very ancestral and I'm gonna sit with like what else is coming up for me, particularly the look on his face. Yeah, it's like a peace. There's like a peacefulness and meditation. Um, I wanted to say because sorry, go ahead.
but no, no. So I'll just say I didn't think that's something that the lens has the opportunity to give.
Yeah.
You know, right before his death, and we didn't know, but it was the exact image that needed to happen for the memorial. Um, and so sometimes spirit just kind of gives us something when we sit in front of a camera. It gives us
Mm,
it gives us
that's
something from our past.
um okay, so we have a couple minutes left, and I have to go, but I don't know about everybody else on this Zoom, but I definitely I feel nurtured through this talk. I feel inspired, particularly as I'm still sitting in the South and thinking about my own work. And it's nice when you get a chance to hear from an artist who inspires and empowers you. And I feel like you definitely like empowered me, and I'm such a big fan. And I just want to give you some flowers to say that I'm really proud of you, Nykelle. I'm proud of you not only as an artist, but as a human being and how you move through the world and how you care for your friends and your community. I love you. I adore you. I look forward to seeing what you're going to do next. Keep going. If you ever need anything, I'm here for you. I will not be paying for the shipping cost for your clothes. So I will let you know tomorrow how much money you owe me. It's probably going to be like $50 to $75. So if Maria wants to just go ahead and like kick that money over to me from this artist talk, that's totally like fine.
It's here by Thursday, so I can be cute on the fucking water with my black baddies. Then I will pay you full price.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'm totally, just remember you said that this is being recorded. So if I need to like go back.
A
In the
tip.
last in the last 2 minutes, do you have anything to say so I can get my ass on the road and not miss a flight and take a shower after 5 days in the shower?
I I really I say this a lot at UCSD, so the people who are here who are about to be at UCSD, you'll hear me say this a lot. Um, I have a lot of hope for the world that's to come through the destruction that we're about to witness. I think we're about to witness some very sad things, but I think of The Fire Next Time, which is one of my favorite pieces I've ever made and one of my favorite books I've ever read, where I think that nothing can happen without this fire, without this cleansing. And I'm really excited for what Black and Brown artists will give us. Um, the new Earth Seed. I mean, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah, we're here. It's time.
And I think we have the knowledge now, and especially through navigating these institutions, I think it is our duty as cultural workers to be starting to help form the language of the world that we want to see come. And any artist that isn't doing that, I think is should be left behind, and is a disgrace to what we're seeing. And I think right now we're seeing us decenter and deplatform the artist that can't even say a genocide is wrong. And that's just the bare minimum. So I'm excited to see what's to come. Though I think it's going to be sad to look at, but I'm very excited to see what's to come.
Change is always hard, it does not come without sacrifices. I want to say thank you to everybody who joined us today. I appreciate y'all. Come back. There will be more artist talks. I wish I knew who was coming next. I don't, Maria maybe will like go ahead and put that in the chat. If you want to make a donation to SFAA, that would be great because we are on our 4th year, which is amazing. We're going to keep doing exhibitions and film festivals and all that. So continue to support our work. We're a community that is here for you, our alumni and our fellow artists. Nykelle, I love you. Be in touch. Let's have a download. You did a great job. This is amazing. Your work is dope. I gotta go catch a plane.
Love
I
you.
love you. All right, bye.